This is the 0750. Is it 0850 GMT edition of the Khoodeelaar television channel, broadcasting under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo editions. Khoodeelaar television channel part A, timed at 0850 GMT, London, UK, Thursday, the 8th of December 2022. I am Muhammad Haque, editing this, and I created this, and we are not actually receiving or seeking what is called in social media friends. And we don't want friends, not because we are hostile to the objective idea of friends in terms of telling the truth and in terms of being candid and open. We are refusing to have friends because most of the social media is obsessed with numbers of people who supposedly follow and are followed in return, but the contents are completely absent. There is no substance, there is no engagement with ethics and morality, and there is no truthfulness. And what happens if there is too much immorality, dishonesty, diversion, and lying? Then any engagement with those people who post such items and contents wastes valuable time that cannot be replaced. So, what we do is broadcast standalone and we leave the contents there for anyone seriously investigating or searching for truthful contents. And we are only ever doing any publishing, broadcasting, writing, etc., if we are telling the truth. We are not in the habit, or we are not interested in doing anything other than tell the truth. This is also something unusual. Now, moving to the practices of big tech, so called, and especially Apple Mac computers. This is not the first time that we have made comments about big tech, but this is the one that should be noted and acted on by truthful people. The mystery of these people having these big techs, especially individuals and controllers, having these billions and billions of pounds or dollars, there is no mystery. They are engaged in brazen robbery. And I shall be explaining the robbery stage by stage. But the biggest robbery is the robbery of society collectively and individually. Because big tech is not being held to account whatsoever. I mean, there is this trendy thing about social media needing to protect children and all that. That is absolute rubbish. They are not doing it. They are not protecting children. They are not protecting innocent people. And they're not protecting democracy. They're not protecting universal franchise and the choice and all the rest of it. I mean, the whole thing about Mark Zuckerberg, who appeared before the American Congress? I mean, the whole show was disgusting. Zuckerberg is neither intelligent nor honest, most certainly not honest in telling the truth about what Facebook gets up to. How the hell does Facebook or Zuckerberg become a billionaire? He says that it will always be free. It fucking never was free. Zuckerberg is a liar. Everyone who contributes original content on Facebook, via based Facebook, is owed money by Facebook. The fact that they are not demanding the money or have not been paid the money does not invalidate the claim that money is owed. Every creative content is to be treated in the same way as, say, a paid professional writer, editor, creative, whatever, in every field. So Zuckerberg is lying when he says that it's been free. It never is free. He's abusing. Zuckerberg is abusing people's contents and stealing them, and he has created a platform based entirely on people's work, which he patronizingly, dishonestly, corruptly says is free. He is the one who is being given free permission, not voluntarily free, but it's a freedom, it's a loophole that shows that the actual role of governance by a state is absent. And this applies to Apple computer as well, because Apple computer, different from Facebook in terms of the logistics and the kind of architecture, Apple computer has been dishonest right from the beginning. Especially it became very greedy with the concept of iPad, iPhone, I this, I that. And what it has done, it has not allowed the consumers the option, the freedom to economically use the devices. So therefore there has been updates, and seamless updates from one edition to another has been abolished. So you've got so many devices, so many kind of platforms that you have to really invest. I mean, a serious amount of money has to be invested in order to be able to make use of a fraction of the promised kind of usability of the devices. All these iPhone editions and versions and all the updates are absolutely dishonestly created. Most of these are bogus. They don't add to the quality of the usability and the main use or uses of a telephone have been distorted, perverted beyond recognition, beyond relevance. It has become a burden on people, and people's energies and other resources are being taken up, used up by being preoccupied trying to get some use out of these devices. And the other thing is the technology. I mean, You buy an iPad or iPhone, and you ask the people in the Apple store, for example, to tell you how to operate this, and what do? They brazenly, stupidly tell you to ring up and phone. Now, anyone who has experience, and most people who have bought these Apple devices, range of devices, I mean, this is an outrageous insult to the intelligence. I mean, they operate on the assumption that we are ordinary people, we are children. No, no, we are even less intelligent than infants, that we don't know that they are doing a scam, series of scams, launching this, launching that, absolutely insulting. It is not original, it is not new, and it's not adding to the knowledge, and it is not adding to the use of the planet and planet's resources in a way that is sustainable. And the governments are completely made of the likes of Sunak. I mean, look at the Sunak. I mean, today's cartoon by the London Times cartoonist Peter Brooks. I mean, it is a typical Brooks cartoon that is showing Sunak being thrown off the back by the horse that he was supposedly riding, and he's hit himself. His head is almost through the pillar, or the kind of the wind kind of fan, or whatever it is. And what it is showing is that Sunak is completely blind. I mean, blind in the not in the sense of insulting people who are involuntarily blind, but Sunak is blind, but is being portrayed by the Conservative Party as being intelligent. Because one of the things that the Times also says in a column, or one of the papers, is that Sunak has brought the Conservatives the, what is it? It is the dullness, the benefit of being dull and boring. It's not a joke, it's not funny, it's not entertaining. Although he has woken up belatedly because of the pressure of the prostitution of the parliament, as exhibited by the various stages of pimping around Michelle Mone, the pressure of prostitution is so overwhelming that Sunak had to give in and be forced to release the documents that show at least more, much more than what has been admitted so far, the actual evidence of how Michelle Mone was moaning with glee, moaning as Moaning. I mean, her business is about moaning and kind of prostitution of the body. Ultimo, the thing that she set up was about enhancing the breasts, for heaven's sake. And the criminal, the sleazeball, David, call me Dave Cameron, deposited her in the House of Peers. I mean, Starmer says that he will abolish the House of Peers. He won't. That is one of the gimmicks that he is indulging in. But it does need to be abolished. The whole of Parliament needs to be abolished, both Houses of Commons and House of Peers, because that is functional. And I started by talking about Apple computer and the actual inaction on the part of MPs. I mean, What qualities do these MPs bring? Most MPs are in the news, for heaven's sake, for pimping, prostitution, sexual harassment, lying. These are the items that actually predominate in the news that feature these members of parliament. For heaven's sake, fraudsters, criminals. 400 years ago, those people, whatever other defects they had, those people who wanted to do something about parliament, ending it, had the intention, which is the only thing that actually survives. They had the intention, honest intention to, with which they entered the parliament premises. 400 years is too long. In any case, the structure is dangerous. And if it happens, if the Palace of Westminster collapses, all the morons would say, why didn't they do something about it? What they're doing is they want to kind of steal more money, billions of public money, under the pretext of doing it up. They shouldn't do it up at all. They should create a version which is much smaller and much more repairable. It's like the Crossrail. When they did the Crossrail hype, and I'll come to the HS2 hype, they said that the Crossrail would revolutionize, the travel and transport and all the rest of it. Look at that. Look at the lines. It hasn't revolutionized anything. And as I said, two incidents. I traveled on this on two occasions only so far, by casually. I didn't plan to. But what has happened in Stratford is that because of Crossrail being added, the platforms have become completely fucked up. Accessing the platforms in Stratford is completely fucked up, difficult. Overground, you needed to go to Liverpool Street from Stratford and vice versa. Previously, you could get that there, but now you can't. You have to go to a miasma of new layers and whatever. Why did they do that? Nobody asked the question. And the stupid fucking morons that do their expertise, the transport experts on the fucking newspapers, they don't fucking look. It's completely additional hazard and completely time wasting. Going back to the Houses of Parliament, the British one. When was the last time that Apple or Facebook or Google, Google's Indian-born whatever, is overhyped by Indian papers? What a fucking disgrace! Why should he be hyped for being Indian? What is special about Indian? He is looting Indian ordinary people. Now, when the conservative, the one that actually pretended to have some intelligence, was kind of sharing this thing, digital whatever, that never put any of these big tech executives to any real rigorous investigative interrogation. And they have no sign of wanting to do that. What they do, they tinker, they tickle. They say we are concerned. Fuck them. They're not concerned. Their fucking intelligence is limited. And there is no morality. Same with the American Senate. When Zuckerberg was there, he was outrageously overly accommodated by the Senate. What were they? What were the senators afraid of? Had they been bribed or had they been intimidated? Whatever it is, Zuckerberg was not interrogated properly at all. And it goes on. Now, for the last few months, since her libel defense against Aaron Banks ended, Carol Coldwater Walter, who wrote significant number of items about Facebook and its role in Brexit and in the election distortion, etc., etc. She has not been seen, I mean, in terms of publishing. As far as I know, I haven't noticed anything by her. I wonder what she is doing now. Now, whatever she is doing, she is not among a large number of people. She is only in Britain, she is the only one who has been actually writing. Why? Why not? And the financial crimes hasn't done any, as far as I know, no investigation about big tech. So, what financial news is it about? So, this is the emptiness, this is the blankness, this is the blanket emptiness when it comes to big tech. And there is no sign that any of the abuses, any of the robberies, any of the looting will be brought to an end or brought under control. Now, going over to Germany, I mean, if the fascists were plotting again with the involvement of at least one identified judge, I mean, it can be extrapolated, and the agenda has not only not gone away, it is very much being under revision. They are revising it. And in the UK, because of the particular kind of nationalistic, racist, race-based kind of approach, they don't want to come across like the Germans. But the fascists are here very much active. Fascists are not some kind of unidentifiable people. Fascists are the likes of Dave Cameron. Fascists are likes of Boris Johnson. And fascists are the likes of Braverman. I mean, Priti Patel, they are forever trying to pass laws restricting freedom, restricting campaigning, restricting access to information. This is fascism. It's one part, one phase of fascism, one aspect of fascism. There is no accountability. And the judiciary, I mean, operates secretively, secret justice. How can that be? There is no such thing as justice when it is secret. And there is no justice anyway. And what's his name? The Daily Star actually calls Dominic Raab man without brains. And they've often published the image of brains, showing that that is what brains look like, and Dominic Raab doesn't have brains. And Dominic Raab has apparently kind of suffered a setback in his so-called Bill of Rights for the third time. Why? If it is so interesting, why is it getting setback after setback after setback? Because it is not anything to do with Bill of Rights. It's to do with taking away whatever remnants of rights there might be, scattered here and there in the general collection of legislation in the UK because there is no one single constitution, written constitution. So it's all fragmented, itsy bitsy pieces here and there. And a thug like Dominic Raab, who is a crook and a liar, I mean, what would he know about Bill of Rights? And why would he, one who doesn't want freedom, doesn't want truth to be published, why would he want anything to do with rights? Unless rights is a disguise to cover lack of rights, which is exactly what the Bill of Rights is about. Which takes us to today's Daily Mail, Thursday's Daily Mail. What is it doing? Thursday, 8th of December 2022, there is a woman called Jan Moa. Where the fuck did she come from? Jan Moa is given a platform in the Daily Mail. She's a spiteful, little hateful racist. She went all the way, well, she was obviously paid to go to the USA. And she says, take a closer look at Meghan and Harry giggling and enjoying themselves at the Robert Kennedy Memorial Human Rights Award, whatever it is actually called. What is so wrong with that? This is not a crime. Of course, it's a propaganda. No doubt about that. I accept that. But having a human rights memorial award does not constitute an offense. Most certainly not. So, what is the problem with this Jan Moa? The poisonous constipation. Why is she so worked up about the pair getting the award? And why does she call Barack Obama non-entity? Because the same award was given to Barack Obama apparently, and she berates Barack Obama as being a non-entity. What is her moral point? What is she comparing with what? Either Barack Obama, in her view, is better than Harry and Meghan, or Barack Obama is not better. I mean, how is he not better? Or how is he worse? If he is worse, which is what would be the conclusion based on her written words today, then of course she is giving credit to Harry and Meghan, which means that she is an idiot. What the fuck did she go to America for? To become an idiot like, what's his name? Was it Margaret Thatcher's husband, Dennis Thatcher? Or was it Bill Deeds? One of those two, because Bill Deeds and Dennis Thatcher were friends for a long time. One of them said that it is better to keep your mouth shut if to open it is to prove how stupid you are. Which is one explanation as to why Dennis Thatcher, publicly at least, stayed with his mouth shut. Why is the Daily Mail still under the satanic influence of the Satan in chief, Paul Dacre, the racist? Why did the Daily Mail fund Jan Moore going to America and write this stupid piece? When somebody like Michelle Mone in the pimping parliament is openly known to have kind of put the rhetorical gun on the head of the Secretary of State, Matt Hancock and others, to extract millions, hundreds of millions of pounds under the cover of the COVID personal protection equipment, etc., etc. There are millions of homes without proper heating, and millions of people going without basic essential food and other necessities. Why is that not scandalous enough, outrageous enough, bad enough for society and humanity to warrant serious, serious, truthful condemnation and writing? How is that not worth writing about? But Harry and Meghan getting an award for human rights is worth writing about and going to town about. How dare they? And where are the people with conscience? Where are the people with conscience and basic common sense? Stopping the Daily Mail, boycotting the fucking Daily Mail. Why isn't anyone organizing a boycott of the Daily Mail like the people of Liverpool have been maintaining a boycott of the Daily Scum after the Hillsborough lies that the Scum published? I mean, that should be expanded to the rest of the country. And the Daily Mail should be boycotted by people right across the country. And there is no real scrutiny of the corrupt, dishonest, and absolutely permanent racist UK judiciary, the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, the divisional courts, the Crown courts, the county courts, the magistrates courts, all the courts and the judiciary and the judges are absolutely corrupt. I mean, there is a 50%, currently, the 50% statistics rise in complaints against barristers. What does it show? Easily, the same applies to judges. But no one can file a complaint against judges, lying judges, racist judges, ignorant judges, because they mostly don't know the facts. There is nothing, there is no way you can do that. So, what kind of democracy is this? Isn't that a scandal to write about, to campaign about? But the Daily Mail and the scum don't do that. They don't believe that. So the Daily Mail and the scum are complicit with the corruption and the dishonesty and the criminality of the courts, the dishonesty, the pimping of the parliament, and the pimping by a whole range of people around Michelle Moan, the breast businesswoman. How the fuck? I mean, how did Dave Cameron, call me Dave, get allowed to deposit her in the House of Peers in the beginning? And why isn't there a series of legal action to stop Boris Johnson depositing his selection of criminals in the House of Peers? Remember, the deposited items can then get entitled to loot, openly commit loot and robbery of the public by making a token appearance under the cover of work and claim allowances for each day. The allowance that a House of Peers deposited individual can claim is many times that of a family on starvation and hunger level in this country. Isn't that a scandal? Isn't that a terrible kind of reality of the corruption of the government? But where is the Daily Mail writing about that? Where is John Moore writing about that? Where is Sue Reed writing about that. Where? When was the last time Sue Reed, one of the most poisonous anti migrant racist criminals in the history of journalism? Now, I mean, there are the journalism, so called British journalism, is corrupt, the history is corrupt, racist, but the way that Sue Reed has been allowed to specialize, Sue Reed has been allowed to specialize for decades in finding the slightest excuse that she then finds an excuse about some kind of flaw, she thinks, in letting in immigrants. And then she exaggerates it to a point where it becomes really formidable looking. That's what they're doing, while the fascists and the attackers of democracy are working within the government, in the lobby system, in parliament. In parliament, that is what the parliament is about. The lobbyists control the parliament, and there is no platform that actually exposes these. The occasional, very rare kind of piece that the Guardian writes from time to time, drawing some attention to these. For example, the behavior of the Daily Mail in undertaking a serial kind of excuses in order to delay the publication of the claims against it by Elton John, by Harry Windsor, and the mother of Stephen Lawrence, Doreen Lawrence, and even Elizabeth Hurley, shows that there is no control over the breaches of court orders or court procedures by the Daily Mail. So, who says that we are a democracy, we are a free country, we are an accountable country, and what is the qualitative difference in terms of being better than what happens in Pakistan, for example? Because Pakistan's Imran Khan could not be more wrong in when he says that Boris Johnson was ousted because of the operation of due process or rule of law in Britain. Imran Khan could not be more wrong. He doesn't know why Boris Johnson was ousted. It was nothing to do with the rule of law whatsoever, because there is no rule of law. If people with money can buy the ruling of the judiciary ordinarily, then there is no rule of law, because the rule of law would automatically prevent such access to people with money to so called justice. Ordinary people cannot go to the courts seeking justice. Now, I have to remember that incident where Thames Magistrates Court, when it was still situated in Arbor Square of the commercial road. When did I do that? I did that, I think, sometime in the late 70s or 1980s. I took a prosecution, private prosecution, against a member of the then Tower Hamlets Law Center because that individual had made a criminal statement against me in the street based on my writing to the law center demanding that that individual be not allowed access to individual people contacting the law center with personal details and complaints, etc., etc. What I was saying there predated the data protection law and all the other things. So I was ahead, as often I have been in many of the areas of law and constitution, etc. Now, instead of appreciating that and recognizing that, two racist morons sitting there as magistrates mounted a serious barbell assault on my attempt to prosecute this individual. That assault was completely unfounded, untruthful, and racist and stupid. But I couldn't do that because I couldn't actually say anything because the racist moron was abusing the place in the court and making a racist statement against me. So I couldn't complain because if I made a complaint, which I did, there is no platform that actually takes up the complaints against a magistrate or a judge or any of the high court judges. That's or the tribunal chiefs. The people in the tribunal, I mean, unless you have the experience of actually encountering these criminals, you have no idea just how widely, deeply ignorant most of the tribunals. What do you call the tribunal judge? Tribunal judges, high court judges, magistrates, district judges, all of them are absolutely fucking corrupt and ignorant. One deputy district judge that I confronted in 2015 in the Stratford County Court, let's call it a housing court, when I was appearing representing a number of people, this idiot was called Sullivan. I call his name. And this idiot was so stupid. He had no idea about Tower Hamlets Council and how corrupt and dishonest the Tower Hamlets Council's individual employees were. And I could give, I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of experience of encountering judges, licensed barristers, solicitors, and all the rest of it. So the whole place, I mean, you've got in Tower Hamlets, for example, in the Whitechapel area, I mean, not far from the East London Mosque, there are offices of the so called Bengali solicitors. I call them soul cheaters. Solicitors, soul cheaters. And these cheaters locate themselves around the East London Mosque because they want to pretend to the musallis, the people who go to the mosque and say their prayers, as being faithful people, just like Maulana Shamsul Haq of the Fort Square Mosque. I mean, Shamsul Haq was a, I mean, how can you begin to condemn Shamsul Haq's behavior? Shamsul Haq was a mullah, was an alim and imam of a mosque. And he was caught lying for Lutfur Rahman in the during the proceedings over the petition against Lutfur Rahman's electoral corruption and fraud and criminality. I mean, how do you begin to condemn this? And this was Shamsul Haq, a Maulana, as was Baroness Pola Munzila Uddin. She too was caught lying and she was condemned openly, condemned as a thief, which factually was the least of her levels and badges. I mean, how stupid of Lutfur Rahman to bring those two liars as his character referees or witnesses to attest to his character, good character, to his honest character. I mean, does Lutfur Rahman have any idea about the fact that he has appointed Ali Bor Chaudhry again? I mean, what Richard Morey, the election commissioner, described Ali Bor Chaudhry as has been not only denied and rejected by the behavior of Lutfur Rahman, but it has been reconfirmed, vindicated Remember the word vindicated? Completely wrong use of vindication by Councillor Kabir Ahmed in another context. Now, Richard Morey has been vindicated, and all the other people, including many of the members of the so called cabinet that Lutheraman had before being thrown out on the 23rd of April 2015. Many of the cabinet members knew Lutheraman was lying. Well, all of them knew Lutheraman was lying, but how many of them told me in private that Lutheraman was a liar? Well, one, two. I can I can I can remember two, especially two members of the cabinet, so called, that often consistently told me various incidents of Lutheraman lying, and Lutheraman not listening to reasonable advice, and Lutheraman doing corruption, and Lutheraman was not caring about the standards or ethics or morality or the law. Those one of those cabinet members, no longer a councillor or cabinet member. Well, neither of those two is a councillor anymore, but especially the one that spoke to me more often than the other one. I mean, he's still supporting Lutheraman, despite the fact that he knows that he told many people. If he told me, he must have told other people tales about Lutheraman lying, Lutheraman being ungrateful, and so on. And this is the continuation of the narrative about why Lutheraman has not been prosecuted, despite the fact that the actual evidence presented to Richard Morey by many witnesses and many interconnected events described to Morey constituted more than significant evidence, more than sufficient evidence, more than very strong evidence of criminality on the part of Lutheraman. For example, one thing that the Price Waterhouse and Cooper's report found was that Lutheraman personally made financial decisions overriding, ignoring the advice of ordinary employees of the council concerned. Not all the employees were honest or were alerting him against being corrupt, but some did their best to warn him that what he was doing was wrong, and he ignored them. Now, that was breaching the general legal duties and breaching the advice of the fully employed employee of the council. So he had to give evidence that he was correct to break the law, that he was correct to be corrupt. That is enough ground to have prosecuted Lutheraman, but Lutheraman so far has not been prosecuted, not because the evidence does not exist. The evidence does exist, and those aspects of the evidence that related to Lutheran overriding the general advice of the honest ones of the employees. Because I have to make that very clear. Most of the council terminals, council employees that do the corruption, do the crime, and do the complicity are in positions that they get higher amounts of money. And most of the ordinary people that work in the lower kind of groups of wages and salary, whatever, do the basic work. They are not engaged intentionally to commit crimes or fraud or facilitate crimes and fraud. The most of the criminals are in the ranks that carry higher salary than ordinary people working. And as I have explained before, at one meeting, well, I had several meetings with Luther Rahman, not a single one of those that he should have had, but these are meetings that Luther Rahman had with me in order for him to avoid and evade doing the right thing, doing the proper legal, lawful things. And Luther Rahman lied at those meetings. For example, he lied by creating a scenario whereby he became kind of subordinate to an employee like the crook Colin Cormack. I mean, he created this scenario. Now, he was an idiot and he actually expected me to go along with his idiocy. And Alibor Chaudhry went along with that, and Alibor Chaudhry lied for Luther Rahman and Colin Cormack at that event. And then Alibor Chaudhry voluntarily confessed to me in Brick Lane after Luther Rahman and him were ousted by Richard Morey. Alibor Chaudhry said in a very short conversation with me that Colin Cormack had lied against me, that Colin Cormack didn't want to do the lawful, legal, and necessary thing. Now, Colin Cormack lied from the time the Sylvie Pierce was there in post. In what are the periods that Sylvie Pierce was in post? Sylvie Pierce was in post, whatever the actual years were. So Colin Cormack started lying from the word go, and Colin Cormack continued to lie until he left the council after Luther Rahman was ousted. And Luther Rahman did dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of lying decision making, illegal decision making. And those people, including, as I said, the former member or members of the so called cabinet, knew that. And they told me, many of them told me, many of the people who were on the Luther Rahman's side as councillors and cabinet members, etc., etc., privately told me how wrong Luther Rahman was, but none of them opened their mouth in public. Now, that may have happened so far, but in time, Luther Rahman's lying in those periods, 2010 until 2015, will come out. Various ways there are various ways that people who are involved in crime, complicit, they speak, and victims of the crimes of Luther Rahman will speak as well, because circumstances have already changed about around Luther Rahman, because those who criminally intended to create a little kind of enterprise and empire through Luther Rahman being the mayor, they found out that if they didn't stop their greed and their stupid assumptions about controlling the Tar Hamlets Council through Luther Rahman, then they would go to jail themselves. That is what I'm saying. Because, for example, in the program that Andrew Gilligan presented and broadcast on the 1st of March 2010 on Channel 4 Dispatches, there was a very short but very significant, very powerful in terms of evidence confession by George Galloway. He was shown in a kind of clip, very short clip, and words were there used saying that he knew that elements around Luther Rahman or that enterprise installing Luther Rahman as the mayor at the expense of Tar Hamlets were dangerous, evil criminals. And George Galloway didn't feel safe around them or safe about them. Now, it couldn't have been just George Galloway who knew that. Other people have known that, and even the criminals themselves knew that, especially when the petition that Lutfur Rahman supporters had dismissed at the beginning. When the petition actually took the form of a hearing and an actual series of evidence taken by the election commissioner, those criminals operating from the so-called East London Mosque, under whether it was IFE, the Islamic Forum Europe, which has been conveniently changed. I mean, they have changed the name of it, or the East London Mosque Committee, or the London Muslim Centre. These are the three expressions of the centre in the name of Islam that the criminal gangs have been using for the best part of the last 20 years, let's say, if not longer. Because if we go back to the actual initial period of the battle between Abu Said and Chaudhry Moinuddin for control over the East London Mosque, then it is what? It is more than 30 years. When the East London Mosque, control for the East London Mosque, was the subject of the battle between the two groups, one group led by Abu Said, and the main group that is still in control was fronted by Chaudhry Moinuddin. And Abu Said was only allowed by Moinuddin, who never actually liked Abu Said or wanted Abu Said at all in the scheme. But Abu Said was only useful as a translator because Abu Said is an Arabic scholar, Arabic language scholar. He's a known scholar of Arabic. And when Moinuddin wanted the Saudis to give him money, he needed somebody like Abu Said. Not only was Abu Said an Arabic scholar, but Abu Said was also, most importantly, a Siloti, which Moinuddin wasn't. And there is, so far at least as far as I know, nobody else as scholarly as Abu Said. So Abu Said's scholarship was used, well, abused by Moinuddin, who pretended to the Saudis that he was very much, that is, Abu Said, not Abu Said, but Chaudhry Moinuddin was himself very trusted by the Silotis and respected and regarded by the Silotis as the trust and confidence in him, as shown by Abu Said, the Arabic scholar. But that was not Abu Said's real purpose. Abu Said wanted his scholarship to be used to set up the mosque and get the funding. But Moinuddin wanted to use Abu Said. And those who are still controlling the East London Mosque, they don't belong to the ordinary people in Tower Hamlets. These are the gang that was set up under the initiative of Moinuddin, who set up the East London Mosque, not as an Islamic initiative, but as a political platform. And it is amazing, isn't it, that despite the fact that the Labour Party says that it is against such things as control of the mosque by the Jamaat Islami and the far right politics in Bangladesh, I mean, nobody has actually challenged them. Jim Fitzpatrick, this is a Scottish name, is it? Fitzpatrick, I call it Fitzpatrick, or Irish name. Jim Fitzpatrick is a piss because he surfaced around the time of Andrew Gilligan's dispatches And he made allegations that people around the East London Mosque were demanding separation of the gender. Well, guests based on gender, the husband and wife should sit separately. That was pathetic. That kind of stupid allegations don't amount to anything. While the real abuse had been taking place for decades, and Fitzpatrick never had the morality or the ethics to actually face up to it, let alone speak about it. Fitzpatrick was a crook right from the word go, and he remains a crook even after retirement. So Fitzpatrick is one of the crooks, and there are other crooks like Michael Crook in the Labour Party. I'm talking about the Labour Party, so-called in Tower Hamlets, and these crooks have facilitated the corruption of the name of Islam in the form of East London Mosque and the East London Muslim Centre. These are not Muslim centre at all. As as became clear in 2006 or 7 with the first solution criminals robbing ordinary Bangladeshi expatriate hard-working labor people, laboring people, that is working hard, whose remittance money was stolen by a gang of criminals associated with the East London Mosque gang. One was Fraud Mahmood, who was the leader of the initiative, and there were two others with him. These criminals looted these Bangladeshis, and instead of listening to the community, instead of campaigning for them and their money to be restored to them, George Git Galloway completely fucked up the whole thing because he gave a spiel at the Altavali Park, which was predictably promoted by the channel slaves. And Git Galloway had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. And Git Galloway completely followed the instructions of those criminals who said to him that don't listen to Muhammad. And I am the only one who was campaigning on the right facts, and I still am, and I was. Now, advising Git Galloway about the first solution scandal was also Ajmal Hussain. Ajmal, of course, relied on Galloway and capitalized on his connection with Galloway because he fed Galloway and his gang regularly. And he thought he bought their loyalty, which he did in a way that they praised him and gave him positive references. And Ajmal Hussain became a kind of name, sort of. But he was lying. Ajmal Hussain was lying, and he was lying, and he's still lying, despite the fact that he did initiate the petition against Lutfur Rahman, but he has not behaved any less corruptly than Lutfur Rahman himself, only that the sphere of corruption was different. Ajmal Hussain misused his connection with Galloway and told Galloway not to listen to me. And so Galloway didn't listen to me, and the whole campaign to get the people their money back got diverted. I didn't get diverted, but the community got diverted because Galloway was given space, not once, several times in the so-called Bangla Post by the criminals controlling the Bangla Post at the time, who repeated Galloway's idiotic utterances in the English section more than the Bengali section, and the English section was full of rubbish. Because Galloway doesn't know the Bangladeshi community, he doesn't know the Pakistani community, he doesn't know the Palestinians. But what he does know is that these people are Muslims, and he can make benefit, which is exactly what he has done in Bradford, in Tower Hamlets, and before he came to Tower Hamlets, while Benazir Bhutto was active and influential, he got a significant amount of money to set up the broadcasting, bogus thing, and the newspaper with the help of Benazir Bhutto in order to give the impression to Benazir Bhutto that he was helping her. Benazir Bhutto herself had been known to me, not directly personally, but in terms of the contracts that I made through my assistant in the 1970s when she was at Oxford. And of course, it was Benazir's father whom I defeated in public in the 1960s in Dhaka. So, what the fuck would Galloway know about any of that? There is nobody else who confronted Bhutto in the way that I did. And nobody defeated Bhutto at a public event like I did. How the fuck did Galloway even begin to question my knowledge or my experience or my background or my campaigning efforts and unique record? So I told him to campaign for the people who have been robbed by the first solution. But Galloway didn't want to do that. And the other thing, of course, was that he kept secret was that his connection with the East London Mosque and the London Muslim Center. Because if he actually listened to what I said, which was to demand the return of the money to the people, nothing to do with attacking the East London Mosque on that occasion, but he thought that that would actually reflect badly on the East London Mosque, which was completely typically stupid of Galloway. I mean, when the final kind of legacy of Galloway's politics is written and added up, it will be found that Galloway was an infant when he started fantasizing about being a politician on the back of the Arabs. When he was in his teens in Dundee, he never grew up. Politically, that is, he never grew up, he never matured. And repeatedly he attacked the Muslims. When the Muslims saw through his designs and stupidity and shallowness, he started attacking the Muslims, which is what he did in Bradford. Now, Galloway should have actually stood up for the victims of the first solution. Instead, he tried to have a kind of chat up one of the Labour MPs. He wanted to do that, like he did try to chat up Isabel Oakeshott on a Sky News kind of press preview event that he was appearing with her. I mean, he looked, you can see the recording. He looked and he spoke as if he was melting in front of Isabel Oakeshott, for fuck's sake. And what he did was this minister, who later became disgraced, the minister under Gordon Brown, because it was by the time the first solution criminals struck, Blair was no longer in office, I don't think. It was Gordon Brown. And instead of focusing on the community, uniting in supporting the demand for the return of the people's money, Galloway completely fucked up and he said that first solution should be controlled, regulated by the British Financial Authority, whatever. Fuck him. He doesn't know the British system either. Because when we started the campaign against Crossrail, what did we do? We started on the assumption, and this is based on December, me and K. Jordan, we agreed early on in the first week of our realizing that Crossrail was plotting to have the hole in Brick Lane. We started on the assumption that we should ignore everything British in terms of regulation, in terms of the judiciary, in terms of the parliament, as forum that we would appeal to. Fuck them. We said we oppose them. That's the way we stopped Crossrail. Now, Galloway had already known, at least for a number of years, because I decided to give him a platform in order to have a go at the liar, Tony Blair. But Galloway completely misunderstood. I told him that I was a longer standing, active politician of unique contributions, and yet I refused to become an elected politician because of my moral high standard. But the fucker completely misunderstood me. I told him that I don't give a shit about position, but I do care about principle, and it is the principles that actually make the difference. So when I said to him that the people's money could only be returned by the people getting united against these creeps, Galloway misunderstood, misread, or was told not to listen to me because I didn't witness any actual conversation. I'm going by the actual circumstances of the time. So, what he did was this little girl is an MP, parliament member, from a so called kind of upper class. What a shit upper class in this country, and crooks are upper class. I mean, he fancied her just like he fancied Isabel Oakeshott on the Sky News chair. And he then focused on her. Fuck Galloway. Why should he focus on a Labour government minister? He had been kicked out of the Labour Party. So why was he still craving to have association with the Labour Party? That shows the shallowness and immaturity and stupidity of George Galloway, political stupidity. And she exploited his vulnerability and weakness. And she diverted the whole thing as well. And these Bangla Post morons, the mental slaves, kept publishing Galloway's idiocy, and they kept lying to me whenever I wrote denouncing Galloway's inaccuracies, and they promised to publish my condemnation. They never did. I wrote several pieces condemning the Bangla Post publishing these idiotic pieces made by Galloway, but they never published my condemnation, criticism, analysis, or fact based evidence. So, this is another evidence, another kind of illustration of the crimes being committed by criminals abusing the name East London Mosque or London Muslim Center. Because Fraud Mahmood was never licensed to be able to practice as a medical doctor in this country. Fraud Mahmood came to the UK, and I think he married a British born person, a British national woman from Ceylon. And he kind of manipulated his way around the Silotis. And that is how he established himself as a Dr. Farah Mahmood. I call him Ferhat Mahmood. Ferhat is a Siloti word. It is a dismissive word, Ferhat, and it means effectively, in character and context, fraud as well. Now, he looted the money along with the other crooks, and we identified them. And what would have happened the next stage if Galloway had not been exploited and used to obstruct or divert these? We would have made Fraud Mahmood and his colluders, others that we did not name, to literally pay the money back. There would be no other way. Because otherwise, they would not be able to operate their businesses. They would be under severe condemnation from the community at home, that is the Silotis here in Tower Hamlets in East London. And Galloway was used to block that, divert that. The Bangla Post, so called, was used to block and divert that. And all the other ethnicity linked outlets abused their position and lied about the people while they were shedding crocodile tears for the victims of the first solution fraud. We shall stop this at this stage. This edition is 1 hour 16 minutes at 10:03 GMT on Thursday, 8th of December 2022. We shall continue in due course.